Just this past week, the City of Winnipeg Property and Development Committee approved a zoning amendment that would allow easier construction of more missing middle housing. That's duplexes, triplexes, and detached suites. And most importantly, all of this on land that only used to allow single-family homes. YIMBY Winnipeg's own Caleb Mueller was on hand to stand in support of this first step towards a more sustainable city. Let's hear why this change is so important to Winnipeg's future.
Welcome back to the public hearing on the rapid zoning bylaw amendments to the Winnipeg and downtown Winnipeg zoning bylaws. We have finished up with our questions, and Caleb Mueller is with us. Caleb, you're with committee. If you want to unmute yourself, you have 10 minutes to discuss the public hearing item.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Hi. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Caleb. I'm a resident of the St. James area, so Councillor Dobson's jurisdiction. Yep. And I'm really excited to be here with you all. I'm here today to speak in favor of the changes proposed in today's rapid zoning bylaw amendments. In particular, the changes that allow more housing units per lot on existing R1 and R2 zone locations, as well as the additions of detached secondary suites. In 2022, City of Winnipeg adopted Complete Communities 2.0 as a strategy and a guideline for how Winnipeg should grow. Through this document, City Council agreed to a target of 50% of all new residential dwellings being built in existing neighborhoods. Since then, Winnipeg's population has started to rapidly increase. By all our own projections, we can see this. By 2027, we are expected to have added almost 57,000 more people to our population. Every one of those people, and the thousands that have been joining us for the past few years, still need a place to live. We've seen what happens in other Canadian cities when the population gets too far ahead of the housing supply. And Winnipeg is largely considered one of the few remaining affordable big cities left in Canada. In order to ensure the future stability of our city, it is crucial that City Council does meet this target. And from all the conversation I've been hearing today and over the past, it does seem like we're all generally in alignment of this. I just feel it's important to come here and kind of speak as to why this is impacting me and how I feel on the subject, and broader considerations for this and other similar pieces of legislation going forward. So the question is, how are we going to go about doing that? And so that brings us to today's amendments. The changes we're proposing here would make it easier, faster, and cheaper to build important infill housing here in Winnipeg. Infill development in Winnipeg and kind of globally has many positive benefits. Here are some of the benefits that are listed in Complete Communities 2.0 that I want to go over today. Infill helping reduce the city's environmental footprint by best supporting sustainable modes of transportation. Infill improving our existing housing stock and variety, specifically in established neighborhoods. Attracting additional residents to better support local retail and our existing community amenities. And infill lessens the need for existing infrastructure by using our existing pipes, roads, community facilities, and other assets. So let's start with the first thing, sustainable transportation. Compared to greenfield development, infill development causes less traffic and, as a result, lower greenhouse gas emissions. Let's compare the addition of 100 extra infill homes in my area here of St. James, just off of Portage Avenue, compared to doing the same thing in a hypothetical new development at the edge of the city. For homes off of Portage, many of the residents here will likely walk, bike, or bus when they need to go somewhere else in the city. Not all, but many. There are lots of nearby commercial spaces and many nearby frequent transit stops, especially in the new future proposed plan. I know that people will choose this because I'm one of those people. It's where my wife and I chose to move when I was working downtown. We have a car, but still we wanted to take this approach. It made it easier in our own lives, and it was better for our environment and, in our opinion, for our kids when we have them. We and others like us are people who are choosing to live in a home that enables travel in an environmentally friendly way and without adding more congestion to our roads. So let's compare this to adding these same houses in a hypothetical new development on the edge of the city. Let's use this one that we assume would go out near the South Point area, right? Due to the location of most of the city's existing amenities, it is likely that the vast majority of residents will drive for most of their trips. There's not too many other options unless you are able to build an entire, complete, self-sustaining community. But then we start to incur more infrastructure costs, which I'll touch on later. Each one of those car trips is more congestion along the roads during rush hour, more wear and tear on those roads, and more greenhouse gases being emitted. Just because we've moved the housing further from your neighborhood specifically doesn't mean we've actually taken the traffic away. Most of the time, it's still got to get through the rest of the city somehow. And this is something I want to emphasize. New homes off of Portage and other similar infill options would give residents the option to live without a car. If you're a person who wants to continue using a car, these amendments do not in any way stop you from doing so. This is not an effort by anyone to take away cars. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Every commuter that is able to conveniently get around the city using public transit or dedicated bike routes is one less driver on the roads, less traffic for you, the car owner. Studies have shown increased availability to public transit and alternative modes of transportation to be the most reliable method for decreasing traffic, far more so than just the addition of one more lane for all the new cars. If more access to our existing transit investment is made, it will be utilized. As of this year, RateHub estimates that the average cost of car ownership in Canada is about $16,644 per year, about 6 months of full-time minimum wage work here in Manitoba. That's 6 months of full-time work before tax just to pay for 1 year of car ownership. Building infill housing, like these amendments allow for, near existing transit routes, give Winnipeggers the freedom to live without a car if they choose to do so, or, as is very often the case, they're unable to afford to do so. It's an unfair burden on the most disadvantaged members of our city if we continue to develop in a way that requires them to spend this much every year just to participate in what many of us consider to be regular daily life, when so many more affordable options could easily be made available through these proposed amendments. And that brings us to our second point, improving the housing variety in existing communities. That is, giving Winnipeggers the choice to choose the type of housing they want to live in and the type of neighborhood where they want to live in. Right now, when someone in Winnipeg is trying to find a place to live, their two main options are a detached house or a large apartment building. There are not a lot of options right now in the city between these two extremes. City planners have dubbed this the missing middle problem. The agenda item in front of us today would allow for the easier and faster construction of certain types of missing middle housing, such as duplexes, triplexes, and small apartment buildings. Building more of these types of housing would give Winnipeggers more affordable options than buying or renting a detached house without having to live in a large apartment building on a busy street. Not everyone wants to or can afford to live in a detached house. There's no harm in giving people the choice to choose the type of housing that best suits their needs. And speaking from experience here, my wife in particular grew up in the area of Charleswood and would have loved to remain in that area, but there were not a lot of great housing options outside of going directly to a full-size single detached house. And that's kind of where we landed our middle compromise here of St. James, where we had to rent for a little while before we were able to move to St. James when we were able to purchase a house. And lastly, I want to talk about the cost to our city's infrastructure. Every time we expand the city by building new areas on the outside of town, we are adding on recurring costs for maintaining that new crop of roads, pipes, and other utilities. These additional costs have piled up over many years of greenfield development and have left us in the position we now find ourselves in. Pool shutdowns, underfunding for city services, and the permanent closure of important transportation infrastructure. Looking at you, Arlington Bridge. According to a report published by the city back in 2018, we currently have $35 billion in infrastructure while maintaining an $85 billion assessment base. If we assume that the need to repair or replace 4% of that infrastructure every year, this is a number that's being used and proposed by most developers these days, that means that we as a city need to set aside $1.4 billion every year forever just to maintain what we currently have. This means that a $250,000 property would be responsible for maintaining $100,000 worth of infrastructure. This is an incredibly high ratio. As a result, in order to be entirely self-sustaining, they would need to pay $4,000 in property taxes every year. And this is a substantial hike over the current rates, almost double what we currently pay. And that's just to take care of the infrastructure. I still imagine most people still want garbage collections, community centers, public transit, and the salaries of our city's hardworking public servants. Simply put, we cannot look at adding new burdens to our city budget in the form of new infrastructure, not unless we start to better utilize what we've already built. And that's precisely what these proposed amendments begin to enable. So look, the policies that are adopted by City Council, including the agenda item in front of us here today, directly influence where our new residents will live and how our city will stay financially solvent. These are small steps, but they're small steps in the right direction. While it would be great, in my opinion, to step right in with big sweeping changes across the city, I get the need for a piece-by-piece methodical approach. I would just say, don't let perfect become the enemy of good. This is going to be an iterative process where we make our city better one step at a time. I'm looking forward to seeing this and other components of the Housing Accelerator Fund come to fruition in the coming months. So the City Council can kind of choose which way we want to go. We can prioritize infill development to meet our housing needs, or we can choose greenfield development. Complete community guidelines that we've set out tell us that the former is the direction we intend to take our city. And in my opinion, it's the only direction that ensures the Winnipeg I was born and raised in is still around and thriving for my own kids one day. Again, thank you, Council. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all here today. Thank you for your time.